Part 2 of the Military Journals of Two Private Soldiers, 1758-1775. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by FNH. The Military Journals of Two Private Soldiers, 1758-1775, by Abraham Tomlinson. Part 2. Introductory Remarks. The conflict known in America as the French and Indian War, and in Europe as the 7 Years' War, originated in disputes between the French and English colonists in the New World concerning territorial limits. For a century the colonists of the two nations had been gradually expanding and increasing in importance. The English, more than 1 million in number, occupied the seaboard from Penobscot to St. Mary's, 1,000 miles in extent, all eastward of the great ranges of the Alleghanies, and far northward towards the St. Lawrence. The French, not more than 100,000 strong, made settlements along the St. Lawrence, the shores of the Great Lakes, on the Mississippi and its tributaries, and upon the borders of the Gulf of Mexico. They early founded Detroit, Kaskaskia, Vincennes, and New Orleans. The English planted agricultural colonies. The French were chiefly engaged in traffic with the Indians. This trade and the operations of the Jesuit missionaries, who were usually the self-denying pioneers of commerce in its penetration of the wilderness, gave the French great influence over the tribes of a vast extent of country lying in the rear of the English settlements. The ancient quarrel between the two nations, originating far back in the feudal ages and kept alive by subsequent collisions, burned vigorously on the bosoms of the representative colonists in America, where it was continually fed by frequent hostilities on frontier ground. They had ever regarded each other with extremes of jealousy, for the prize before them was supreme rule in the New World. The trading posts and missionary stations of the French, in the far northwest, and in the bosom of the dark wilderness, several hundred miles distant from the most remote settlements on the English frontier, attracted very little attention until they formed a part of more extensive operations. But when, after the capture of Louisburg by the English in 1745, the French adopted vigorous measures for opposing the extension of British power in America, when they built strong vessels at the foot of Lake Ontario, made treaties of friendship with powerful Indian tribes, strengthened their fort at the mouth of the Niagara River, and erected a cordon of fortifications, more than 60 in number, between Montreal and New Orleans. The English were aroused to immediate and effective action in defense of the territorial limits given them in their ancient charters. By virtue of these, they claimed domination westward to the Pacific Ocean, south of the latitude of the north shore of Lake Erie, while the French claimed a title to all the territory watered by the Mississippi and its tributaries under the more plausible plea that they had made first explorations and settlements in that region. The claims of the real owner, the Indian, were lost sight of in this discussion, and it was a significant question asked by an Indian messenger of the agent of the English Ohio Company. Where is the Indians' land? The English claim it all on one side of the river, and the French on the other. Where does the Indians' land lie? The territorial question was brought to an issue when in 1753 a company of English traders and settlers commenced exploring the headwaters of the Ohio. The French opposed their operations by force. George Washington was sent by the Virginia authorities to remonstrate with the French. It was of no avail. The English determined to oppose force to force, and in the vicinity of the now flourishing city of Pittsburgh, in western Pennsylvania, the French and Indian War began. Provincial troops were raised, and armies came from England. Extensive campaigns were planned, and attempts were made to expel the French from Lake Champlain and the southern shore of Lake Ontario. Finally, in 1758, 3 armies were in motion at one time against French posts remote from each other: Louisburg in the extreme east, Ticonderoga on Lake Champlain, and Fort Duquesne, where Pittsburgh now stands. General Sir James Abercrombie commanded the expedition against the Ticonderoga, accompanied by young Lord Howe as his lieutenant. The French were under the command of the Marquis Montcalm, who was killed at Quebec the following year. The English and provincial troops rendezvoused at the head of Lake George, went down that sheet of water, attacked Ticonderoga, and were repulsed with great loss. It was this portion of the campaign in which the soldier served who kept the journal given in the succeeding pages. It is a graphic outline picture, in a few and simple words, of the daily life of a common soldier at that time. During the campaign of 1759, Quebec was captured by the army under Wolfe. Lord Amherst, more successful than Abercrombie, drove the French from Lake Champlain. Sir William Johnson captured Fort Niagara, and all Canada was in virtual possession of the English, except Montreal. That fell early in autumn of 1760, and the struggle for supremacy in America between the French and English was ended forever. End of Part 2. Recording by FNH. Please visit www.bookranger.co.uk.